And welcome back to a rather sad David67 with the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel today. Obviously, a very, very disappointing game, very, very disappointing performance on Saturday against Hearts. Our unbeaten home record ending at 52, which is one short of Celtic's best ever record. Our brilliant record against Hearts, blown as well. And overall, really, for me, only one player who came out with good marks for the performance against Hearts, which was Callum McGregor. A lot of extremely poor performances from other players, and some okay performances from a few other players. I think there are a couple of things that we do have to acknowledge. That in the match, Celtic had 77% of the possession, Hearts had 23. We had 18 corners to their 3. We had 22 shots at goal to their 5, with Celtic having 5 shots on target and Hearts just 2, both of which obviously went in. Hearts obviously a lot more efficient, defended very well, and had come out with a good game plan of how they were going to nullify Celtic and then hit them on the break. They had very quickly, I suspect, with their management and coaching staff and analysis staff, they'd very quickly worked out where are Celtic vulnerable. Well, we're vulnerable for corners, we're vulnerable at direct free kicks outside the box, and lo and behold, first goal, poor defending at the back post, complete lack of organisation for the corner, Scales and Taylor getting in each other's way, CCV and the other defenders, and Joe Hart nowhere to be seen, no one taking command of the box, no one controlling things, no goalkeeper coming out to take control of the 6-yard box, take control of the ball coming across his path, no punching, no catching. And that's been very typical of Joe Hart's performance this year. Very typical of Celtic's ability to defend balls into the box, be it long throws, corners, or direct free kicks. Knocked into the box, and all of that comes down for me to the defenders, but primarily to Rodgers and his coaching staff. They clearly aren't training the Celtic defenders or goalkeepers properly about how to defend corners, and very clearly, yet again, very reminiscent of the Feyenoord free kick. Poor organisation of the wall, poor organisation by Joe Hart, leaving a big gap for the ball to go into. Did notice that Lewis Palmer was shouting at the wall to come further across, because quite clearly there was a gap at that post, with the wall not defending it. Joe Hart starting position far too far over to his right. Ball goes into and on the left. The wall is supposed to be defending that area, and it wasn't. And so Hart should be more central, which then allows him more ability to go both ways. Obviously, Kingsley would be more likely to go to the side defended by the wall rather than to the side that more defended by the goalkeeper. Hart was too far over. But that's down to the goalkeeping coaches, it's down to the defensive coaches, and it's down primarily to Rodgers. I did hear the crowd chanting "sack the board." The board can only do so much. It's down to the players who Rodgers picked, and it's down to Rodgers and the coaching staff to set the tactics. The board has committed a lot of Celtic's money to signing a lot of our best players on long-term contract, also signing a couple of our Scottish backup players, Ralston and Welsh, on long-term contracts. All of this is important. We've got many of our star players on nice long contracts. They're all being very well rewarded with high amounts of money in terms of Scottish football. It may be that encourages the Hatatis and the O'Reillys, etc., to stay at Celtic for a good 2 or 3 seasons. I think personally, all the clamour for O'Reilly being transferred off to England, perfectly understandable. I think actually Matt O'Reilly would be better to stay at Celtic another season and a half or more, to get better and better, and then that will allow him more easily to transition to English Premier League or Bundesliga football. As I think at this point he may struggle against top level players week in, week out. However, I really do hope that O'Reilly chooses to stay at Celtic for the next 18 months or so, which helps us on the way. So basically, for me, admittedly, we have lost in the closed season a couple of players to transfer, Jota and Starfelt. Starfelt's replacement was Navroki, with Lagerbielke as backup. Navroki got injured almost as soon as he got into the team. He hasn't been given a chance to show his skills. I think people judging him is massively premature. Lagerbielke straight into the team, having had one day in training with Celtic. He and Scales formed a very good partnership. He had 4 consecutive clean sheets. I did say in one of my short videos that he had 6 clean sheets. I think it's actually 4 or 5. I was relying on another Celtic YouTube pundit and his stats. Carter Vickers came back into Celtic's defence against Lazio. Almost as soon as he did, we gave away a rather terrible goal, mostly due to his error. That cost us the game against Lazio. And so from the Lazio game onwards, Celtic's had 3 clean sheets in 16 matches, of which Carter Vickers played 14, and obviously Scales played all 16 of those. Scales and Carter Vickers don't seem to be forming a good partnership. We have had 3 clean sheets. I think of all those games, the only game that really we looked good sound defensively was the Aberdeen match. We were a bit harum scarum against Ross County and got away with things. And so, for me, I am very, very flabbergasted as to why Rodgers wants Lagerbielke out the door. I seriously doubt that we'll be able to recoup our 3.4 million that we used to buy him. We have to remember also Lagerbielke was Swedish Defensive Player of the Year 2023 season. Good enough to be one of Sweden's centre-backs in their full international squad, playing a couple of international games earlier this year, a couple of months ago, scoring 1 goal as well. Lagerbielke is our tallest central defender, a good couple of inches taller than everybody else, taller than CZV, taller than Scales, taller than Welsh, taller than Navroki. He is actually a threat in both boxes with his aerial ability. Is a good passer, good anticipation, and for me, he got better and better and better as a defender for Celtic. Formed a good partnership with Johnston and Scales. Had a bit of a confidence knock, obviously, in the Feyenoord match. Came back with another clean sheet the match straight after. Then, as soon as CCV's supposedly fit, he's back in the team, and Celtic's defensive record since that time has been disappointingly poor, and the poor spell we've had of draws and losses recently have all coincided with CCV's return to form, return to the team. Admittedly, the worst performance I think of that was our loss to Kilmarnock, which was largely down to Greg Taylor being useless at left back and Nat Phillips being even more useless in central defence, putting far too much pressure on Scales and Johnson to cover them. Joe Hart's had one good game in the last couple of months. He looks a major liability anytime the ball comes near him. I don't think I ever thought I would be saying this, but I do wonder whether we should be going to Scott Bain, who did look actually pretty good in the one game he played after Hart got himself sent off. I'm reluctant to say that because Scott Bain had an awful game against Hibs last year when he was given a chance when Ange rested Hart. But I think times are getting a bit desperate. And Joe Hart is a liability, Greg Taylor a liability also, and our defence looks pretty awful at the moment. And that can only really be rectified by solid training this week prior to Livingston and a consideration of switching things around, maybe Scales to left back, bringing in Navrocki or Lagabielka in beside CCV, assuming that CCV is completely fit. If not, Navrocki and Lagabielka. However, Rodgers seems desperate to get rid of Lagabielka, which I think is rather tragic. Coming back to the game, as I said, McGregor had a very good game. In essence, he was doing the work of three men, because any time you pick David Turnbull and Mikey Johnston, you're playing a game with 9.5 men. Mikey Johnston, yet again, completely anonymous, nothing creative, nothing of any merit to commend. He's had a pretty decent half against St Johnstone, and then since then yanked off early against Feyenoord, Hearts, Hibs and Kilmarnock. One would be better just have gone into the game with 10 men, as have Mikey Johnson on the side. David Turnbull never does any midfield duties or defensive duties, hangs about in the final third, waiting for a long shot. Did have a nice long shot that was well saved by Zander Clark, otherwise his contribution was virtually zero. Rather confused also at half time. On comes O, good move. Although O and Kyogo don't seem to have a partnership together. They never seem to feed off each other, they never seem to create space for each other. On came Dyson Maeda. If Dyson Maeda was fit to come on at half time, he should have been starting the game. An injection of pace and attack by Maeda in comparison to Johnston's completely ineffectual performance. Maybe would have got us on the front foot against Hearts, got us on top, given us a lead, which then would have completely changed the Hearts tactics. On comes Maeda, takes him a bit of time to get into the game, as would be expected. Maeda nearly did score a goal, ball slid across the box, and he was on the edge of the 6-yard box, but couldn't quite get himself there to score. Also, a lovely ball by Lewis Palm in the second half. Kyogo couldn't quite get the ball under control. A couple of nice shots. Lewis Palmer, of course, should have scored in the first half at the back post, but the ball was blocked. A couple of nice long shots, well saved by Zander Clark. Celtic had the chances to get themselves back into the game and even win the game, but the ball just isn't going into the net. That's very reminiscent of the games against St Johnstone at Celtic Park, Hibs away, and the game against Kilmarnock. We did create the chances, just we didn't take them when the chances mattered. Hearts got their chances, Shanklin took it, and Kingsley had a really nice free kick. Whether there should have been a free kick given in the first place, I have my doubts, but it was given. Celtic then need to defend that far better, and they didn't. Half time, off goes Johnston, Alistair Johnston, which I found really bemusing. I thought he had a perfectly good first half. Hadn't been brilliant, but hadn't been bad, as opposed to his left-sided compatriot Taylor, who had a poor game, and he continued to have a poor game. Another player that's on his way out in the transfer window in January, Alex Burnaby, came on. Quite why we're bringing on Burnaby when Rodgers is getting rid of him in a few weeks' time, I don't know. Burnaby wasn't much cop at either. On came James Forrest. Again, never really contributed very much at all. As I said earlier, I thought O and Kyogo have the potential for a great partnership. But it felt a wee bit like O was supporting Kyogo when really it should be the other way around, with Kyogo feeding off of O's ability to hold up the ball, get into the ball, header the ball down, etc. So for me, the players and primarily Rodgers has to take the blame. Rodgers is the one who can turn things around. He's the one that can restore the energy, the attack, the spirit, the confidence of the players. You've got 1 week to get things properly sorted out in defence for corners and free kicks and balls into the box. He and the goalkeeping coaches really need to get into Joe Hart's head, get him back playing the way he used to be able to play. And I think Rodgers has to put his hand up properly and admit that he has got to solve things. The biggest change for me between last year and this year is Rodgers has taken over as manager. A lot of players who are playing well and Ange Postecoglou are not playing well this year. A lot of the team energy, the never say die spirit has gone. We've seen that sort of spirit a couple of times, such as the Feyenoord match, such as the second half against St Johnstone. But recently, we seem to have a team lacking confidence, lacking spirit, and lacking the never say die attitude that's served Celtic so well for so long and was very much in evidence during Ange's 2 years. And we also have to remember the first half of Ange's first season. He had a lot of injuries, a lot of players in and out, and yet he found a way to get results. When things have been a bit more difficult for Rodgers, he's not finding a way to get results, nor is he finding a way to get Celtic's spirit and energy and commitment back up again. So overall, rather disappointing game. I think we have every chance of stabilising things if Rodgers puts his hand up, gets to work with the players. Yes, we need to bring in a couple of players for definite in the next transfer window. I think the primary area we have to rectify is goalkeeper, although that doesn't seem to be high up in Rodgers' wish list. We need to get another striker, especially because O and Kyogo are going to be away. Updating on that, Kvistgaarden or Bromby does appear to be on several clubs' shopping lists. There were some stories in the press that Celtic had shown a lack of initiative in the summer transfer window. The sources that recorded many of the stories at that time Celtic had a bid of 4 and a bit million turned down. Celtic then came back in negotiations with suggestion of 5 and then even 6 million. Although there wasn't a formal offer at 5.5 or 6 million, there were negotiations to see what Bromby's asking price was. And late in the transfer window, Bromby decided they didn't want to sell their best striker and they were going to keep hold of him up until the January transfer window. And so it wasn't as if Celtic didn't commit the money to buy Kvistgaarden, it's Bromby decided they didn't want to sell Kvistgaarden until January at the earliest. We don't know whether Bromby want to sell Kvistgaarden now, and so the interest from Schalke 04 in Germany, who are said to be putting forward a bid, although they can't do that obviously until the window opens in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll see whether Kvistgaarden chooses to go to stay at Bromby, which of course is entirely possible. He is said to be keen for a move. Probably culturally, he's more likely to go to Germany than he is to Scotland. But we'll see what happens. It may be that coming to Celtic is a thing on his list because of the fact he then would be playing for Matt O'Reilly, with Matt O'Reilly, assuming that O'Reilly stays with us. Rodgers also seems dead set on bringing in Thiago Araujo from Estoril, the relegation battling Portuguese club, even though he doesn't seem to tick any of the wish list targets that we want, i.e. he's not an experienced player, a season and a half playing for relegation battlers in the Portuguese top division, a couple of international under 21 caps from before, but not a current full international, no European cup competition experience at any of the levels other than under 18 when he was playing for Benfica Academy teams. Isn't an instantaneous starter for me. Often plays left midfield or left wing back for Estoril. Playing left back in a back four is unusual for Thiago Araujo for Estoril. He primarily plays with three central defenders beside him or behind him. He is a good player going forward, good creative player, a lot of pace. Could well be a good player for Celtic, left midfield or left attacking midfield. If we went to a wing back system, I think Alison Johnson on the side would do a grand job. So if that's what Rodgers is looking at doing, three centre backs, Scales, CCV, Navrocki, etc., with two wing backs, then Araujo might well be a player for Celtic. However, if we're staying with the back four, as we have for years and years and years, then Araujo is not a good enough defender, and we should be looking elsewhere. So, despite the fact that Rodgers says he wants quality players who are difference makers, who will be a difference maker for us in big games and in European Champions League matches, Araujo doesn't seem to be that player. But if we do sign him, by goodness, I'll be supporting him to be the new Kieran Tierney, the new Danny McGrain, the new Andy Robertson, etc., rather than the new Barnaby, the new Laxalt, the new Bolly Bolingoli, or the string of other left-back failures we've had. I think also Rodgers needs to get Greg Taylor back to the confidence and spirit and energy and performance as he showed under Postecoglou last season, or swap Scales across to that side. So, other couple of things that I actually was particularly pleased about were that there were quite a lot of ex-Celtic players and pundits saying that the blame largely lies with Rodgers. The board does need to take some blame for maybe not getting some of the transfer deals over the line last summer. I think we have to remember that it's difficult to judge Tilio and Navrocki, given they spent several months of their Celtic career at start injured. Coping with injuries such as Hatate, Abad and Maeda have been quite important. Abad and Maeda, very, very important players for Celtic, given the way that we play, especially given the fact we lost Jota. Jota was a very good player for Celtic. However, he wasn't a great player for Celtic week in, week out. He wasn't dependable, but when he was on form, he scored good goals, created goals, and was a constant danger. And we haven't really replaced him on a consistent basis, partly because, for me, Abad has been out, which has put extra pressure on Maeda and Palma. I think it's difficult for Palma to deliver on a consistent basis when there's absolutely nothing coming down the other side, which means there's so much more pressure and marking on him on the opposite side. If he and Abada or he and Maeda start to form a dual threat, I think both will be much more of a threat together with a degree of synergy. So I think I'll finish things off at that point there, rather a long video, maybe a wee bit rambly at times. Had been intending to do a video yesterday, but had a number of family things and Christmas related things, and I was actually quite sad because none of my teams this weekend in various different sports and forms of football won. The Celtic women's side, for those who follow that, had a disappointing draw against Hearts also, that keeps them 3 points behind. My favourite English side, Liverpool, which had a lot of links obviously with Celtic going back to the Jock Stein, Bill Shankly years, and obviously Celtic great Kenny Dalglish, such a big history at Liverpool. They drew as well, and a couple of other sports where I support teams, they also had disappointing, demoralising draws as well. So a bit of a sad day all around, bit of a sad weekend all around. So apologies for those who were looking out for a video yesterday. Hopefully today's video has suggested some thoughts, provoked some debate and discussion, and I would be absolutely delighted for anybody to pop their comments in, whether they agree with me, disagree with me, their own thoughts about potential players coming in, potential changes to the side, and what Rodgers and his staff need to do to turn things around. We do have a whole week to the Livingston match, and then we've got Boxing Day against Dundee, then the vital game against Rangers. They are now 5 points behind us with 2 games in hand they have. They will have rather an intensive spell up to the new year with their catch-up fixtures. The game against us is away from home for them. There'll be no Rangers fans there to cheer them on. So I think it's doubly important that every Celtic fan available knuckles down and supports the club 100%, gives Rodgers and the players the support they need, and hopefully Rodgers can get the team back on an even keel and back to the great days of early in the season when Celtic did play with a lot of skill, attack, aggression, and good spirit. It's been inconsistent under Rodgers. When under Postecoglou for 2 years, it was week in, week out, game in, game out, that Celtic were 100% on the ball and everybody playing to their best as often as possible. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Sorry for being a bit rambly today. If you haven't subscribed already but like the channel, like the content, do please click that subscribe button and like button. And as I said, do feel free to pop your comments into the comment section and I'll get back to you, or deal with them in tomorrow's video or later videos this week. So, goodbye and hail, hail.